Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Randy Bach. Today is April 24th, 2023, and I'm happy to be with you here today with Taxpayer Talk. I want to first thank the voters, or at least some majority of voters of Newton, for rejecting the number 1 override. There were, I think, 2 smaller propositions about schools and whatnot, but we banded together, and it was an interesting outcome. We're going to probably talk about that on a future episode, the demographics, the splits, what happened, what went where. But just as a minor preview, it was not necessarily intuitive. It was kind of counterintuitive how this went. And wealthier parts of Newton, which tend to go more left-leaning, actually voted against the override. So maybe they know something the rest of us should know about how to take care of money and so forth, because they probably didn't get as wealthy as they did without doing that first. And we're going to try to weave that into our theme tonight, which is, it's going to be a drag tonight. I got to tell you, it's going to be a drag for most of the night. Actually, what I mean by that is that we are potentially going to create some drag on what has been a drag on the City of Newton system, which is the Drag Queen Story Hour, which I don't know how I graduated from high school without having that on a regular basis. Most people you know, if they're walking and talking and have jobs and whatnot out in the world, managed to graduate without having Drag Queen Story Hour in high school. How did they do it? We don't know, but obviously damaged goods, as a result. But we're going to be talking about this from a little bit from a taxpayer standpoint, from a legal liability standpoint, from a parental standpoint, and in order to do that, so you just don't hear my standpoint, I have a wonderful guest with me tonight, the esteemed attorney Neil Glick. So thank you for coming along. I warned you.
Yes, I've been warned.
So Neil, you technically shouldn't be on the show because you're from another town. You just do speak English, much like as we do.
Yes.
But Neil is from neighboring Wellesley, and he ran for school committee twice there.
Yes.
And I'd love to say he won twice, but he hasn't. He's yet to win. He's a pre-winner, as many of us. We're going to get rewards and awards for not winning. But Neil, tell us a little bit about the landscape regarding schools. What did you learn about with your runs? But we're going to not spend that much time on that, but let's capsulize for some of the issues that are presented to Newton parents and Wellesley parents and so forth by things that go on in the school without necessarily warning from the teachers, administrators, and staff, and kind of this second economy, a secret economy of things that are going on regarding sexuality and gender at the schools versus at home. Yep. That's a big question, right?
Yeah, it is. And well, first of all, I'll just say that what happens in Newton doesn't stay in Newton. So it does migrate.
I thought that was Las Vegas.
Yeah, but it does migrate across the Charles to Wellesley. So I think people in my town, Wellesley, looked at the drag queen episode at Newton North. It was Newton North, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Newton North.
And they were alarmed because it happened very close to them. Now, as far as what I learned in our campaigns, I learned several things, some of which may not be applicable to Newton because it's a bigger city, but I learned that town politics is small town politics in a town like Wellesley is very hard to overcome. There are entrenched interests, and people don't really want change. So if you run as a change agent, which I did, then you upset people, but it's hard to get a majority when people want to stick their head in the sand and think that everything is just fine with their schools, when all the data, and I understand this is true in Newton too, all of the data, all of the metrics, no matter what metric you want to choose, demonstrates that things are not fine.
No.
But people want to believe that their schools are as they were 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that they're just fine and better than just fine. They're the best in this Commonwealth, and that means they're probably about the best in the country. No longer the case. No longer the case in Wellesley, and I dare say no longer the case in in Newton, and you were telling me before, my favorite expression in Wellesley, and it's true in Newton apparently too, is people vote with their feet. Your enrollment's going down significantly. What did you say, 14%?
My understanding is it's gone down 14%, but abruptly.
Yeah.
You know, the population of Newton has not changed that much in the prior 15 years or so, so we were kind of, and nor had the birth rate very much, so there was same kind of flux through the city and city schools, but people voted with their feet and their wallets.
Yeah.
So they used their fingers and their hands
Yeah.
in order to write checks or Zelle or whatever they had to do to get the money over to the private schools, the Catholic schools or whatever. Because Catholic schools I know stayed open during COVID. So part of it was a COVID thing. Part of it was that during COVID, people were at home and they were watching the Zoom classes and they were like, oh my
Right.
God. You know,
Right, and the excuse from the administration, the school administration in Wellesley, and I'm sure it's the same in Newton, is that, oh, well, it's all COVID related. You know, people left because of COVID and they didn't come back in the same numbers as they anticipated. No, that's not true. They left because what they saw when they were, as you were saying, when their kids were being educated at home over the computer, what they saw they didn't like, and they voted with their feet. And the lines on the graph in Wellesley are frightening, because you see clear and chronic and steep decline in enrollment, and at the same time you see clear, chronic, and steep rise in taxpayer funding of the schools. They have less students but more administrators. And I don't understand how that works.
it doesn't. You know, Mark Stein, who's a TV pundit, I've met him. He's an interesting, smart guy. You should read his book, The Passing Parade, one of the best books ever. It's a collection of his obituaries, which sounds kind of morbid, but he's a very funny man. Anyway, he once said of General Motors, it's a very successful pension transfer mechanism with a failing automotive branch.
Right.
Something similar might be said here. I think we've been very successful as a school district, well, probably throughout the Commonwealth, at getting money into pensions and salaries of teachers and expanding the number of teachers. And we are really, I think, at the forefront of lowering teacher unemployment.
Right. And there's another Stein, I think it was Herb Stein, Ben Stein's father, the economist, who said, if something can't continue, it won't.
Exactly right.
And that's the situation with our schools. We're starting to pick up on it in Wellesley because town meeting is starting to take a hard look at the school budget, and I think that's going to be turned around in a little while.
Well, we'll see about that. I actually want to make a little segue to possibly a mistake. Actually, it's Missy Steak, to be more precise. Missy Steak, you may or may not know, was invited to our schools, and my understanding is it was done at the non-behest and non-request of parents. I think this is a functional, structural item that's happening within our schools. That here I've got a little graphic. Let's call that a circle. There's a loop, and you're either in the loop or out of the loop. And I think parents are out of the loop. And this is, I think President Biden recently said, I have a quote here. I brought my handy dandy quote. He said, literally, there's no such thing as someone else's child. Our nation's children are all our children. Okay, well, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Right.
You know,
right. I brought my children into, well, my wife brought our children into the world. I had something to do with it, but, and I support them, and I house them, and I feed them, and I nurture them, and I do my best to educate them. And I don't like somebody telling me, as teachers in my son's school have told me, that we have them, the teachers have them. No, no, no. No, there are kids. Yeah. You get to educate them. That's your job.
Right. We do this. We do tax paying.
Yeah.
And we want to stand up for smart spending and all that kind of stuff. We're not opposed to having public schools. I think it's a reasonable proposition. I actually went to the Horace Mann School in New York City, which ironically enough is a private school, but it was named for Horace Mann, who came from Lincoln, I believe, Massachusetts, or thereabouts. And his proposition was kind of as the melting pot. It hadn't really become a melting pot quite yet. There was immigration going on. I think he was late 19th century and into the early 20th century. And his proposition was that we needed something that would anneal the different, part of the melting pot, I guess the same metal analogy, to get everyone to form an alloy and be allied and form a strong society. And they needed basic principles, and they needed to know how to read. A lot of people coming from other countries, they had zero literacy, and they were in the trades and whatnot. And fine, all well and good. But the public schools were to provide some common element, but in terms of providing actual education and useful items so that people could have productive lives. I had occasion recently to see photographs from 100 years ago, and your eponymous town, the college, Wellesley College, had kind of like docents. They had young students come over into Newton, which had more of an immigrant population, and they were teaching them baking. Oh. And they were teaching them kitchen skills, the young women of Wellesley. And that was, in a sense, that was part of their outreach of schooling. And these were useful skills for young children of new immigrants, so they could get ahead in the restaurants and whatnot, hotels and so forth, mm-hmm. and have something. That the schools are, what is a school? We are schooling something.
Well, I'm a public school product, as are you.
Yes.
And I believe in public education. It's a wonderful thing. And you mentioned the melting pot. What we're seeing now is the opposite. Identity is the key. Identity politics is the key, and that, by definition, divides students into camps. And it divides us. It divides parents from students, as you just pointed out, but it also divides students amongst themselves, and they're put into categories.
Absolutely.
They're oppressor versus oppressed.
A terrifying thing.
Yeah.
I find this absolutely horrifying, and people are uncomfortable about this. I mean, it's really hilarious, but not that this spectrum, something we call race, is frankly pretty what's the word? Nonspecific. I'll give you one quick one. Jason Tatum, basketball player, was really happy to have Derek White join the team last year. And there's a quick little snip on TV where he kind of grabbed on Derek White. He just joined the team. He's being interviewed, and it's like, Jason, why are you so happy? He says, because he light-skinned like me. and so okay, are they black? Are they what? There's kind of a whole spectrum of color, and even within the black community, as it were, Jason saw affinity with Derek White. Now, I'm okay with that either way. I don't know if there's any fissure or between darker skin, whatever. But race is one of these things that you might see it one way, and others might see it another way. I grew up in New York City. And in my neighborhood, I wish in retrospect, I wish everyone told us, hey, you're all white, stop fighting. Because there were the Italian kids, the Irish kids, the Jewish kids, East European, Jewish, whatever. And, you couldn't go into certain neighborhoods without being under threat. Armenian neighbor, whatever. It was just like, and there was Catholic and Protestant. There was all kinds of fissures. People have been doing this forever. Right. And what they needed was what Horace Mann himself wanted to promote. I went to public school originally, the first 6 years, and we didn't think about anything. We never heard about any of that stuff. We learned some math. I mean, I actually know how to count now. It's really awesome. The reading thing is so improved.
Yeah.
but the irony is where the CRT actually gets promoted, they are not reading at grade level. In Chicago, I don't even want to quote the statistics because I can't even believe them, but I've heard that only 2% of students in Chicago schools are reading at grade level.
Right.
This is your focus, teachers. I don't know if any teachers watch this show, but your focus is getting them to and above grade level.
But let's talk about sex.
Let's do that instead.
Because it's absolutely
right.
It's such a more fun subject to talk about. But and getting back to reading and writing and arithmetic, because this all falls of a piece, I think. You know, I look at it as an education issue. I mean, teachers and administrators are professionals. They do professional work. They do great work. I mean, we have in Wellesley, and I'm sure in Newton, fantastic teachers. But you know, I'm a lawyer. When I go into court, I don't bring a drag queen with me. I just don't do that. It doesn't.
You should branch out.
Yeah, it doesn't help my presentation at all. And similarly, I just don't understand why we're spending in Newton, why you're spending precious education hours for our youth, which desperately need it, to explore the wonders of Missy Steak and the drag queen performance lifestyle. It's not happening in China. I can guarantee it's not happening in South Korea. It's not happening in Japan. Not happening in Germany. I just don't see, we're falling behind.
Right.
And you were talking about Chicago and reading scores. Think about your MCAS scores here in Newton, because I looked at them in Wellesley. I bet it's the same kind of thing. You know, yes, you're better than the state average. We're better than the state average. But the state average includes a lot of little Chicagos, such as Boston, Lawrence, Springfield, which are fine places, but I bet they're not really hitting it off the charts with education.
There's a lot of new Americans, and they don't have the luxury of having had their parents be able to read in that language. You know, it's an amazing thing. You know, people want to learn. They want to get better. They want to improve. My medical practice was in Revere for 27 years, and I saw huge influxes of immigrants, and came in waves. Early on, in my career, there was Cambodians, and then there were Bosnians, a lot of others from East Europe and so forth, and then waves of Nigerians, and in between that, Moroccans and so forth. Almost all of them, if you come back now, they're in good positions and they were working hard. I'm not saying every single one, but there was a certain time the Boston Globe used to publish the valedictorians of the area, up and down the whole city, and I would look at the North Shore, the communities and so forth. A lot of them I treated Lynn and whatnot, and the valedictorians, this was probably in the 90s, were almost uniformly Cambodians.
Yeah.
Now this is an incredible thing. Their parents not only didn't read in their own language,
right,
but insofar as they had languages at home or newspaper, or whatever, it would be in a language that was completely not, you know, Roman, English, Germanic based, such as ours. They didn't use our letters.
right.
It's a whole totally different system. And here they are, one generation, and they're valedictoria, and it's an incredible thing. And that shows the urge and the thirst for knowledge.
Yes.
My older brother, with whom I didn't agree on much, he was asked to coin a word once because we were in this school, and he came up with vorschent, and it was voracious, and scient was knowledge. It was hungry for knowledge, and it's a great word. Should be out there. Mr. Dictionary, Collins, or it's a great word.
Get it on Wikipedia.
So people have this hunger for knowledge, and they want to strive, they want to get better, and they want to improve. So you take people, you know, we talk so much about race these days in society. The actual Nigerians are physically darker. They're more African genetically and genomically than American blacks are. And they are doing better than the average of whites economically and on test scores and so forth. Why is that? It's a cultural thing, and it's a desire for knowledge. People need to get out of their political way so that people can get the things they need to do to get ahead. And what they need to get ahead, basically it's STEM stuff, but also, you know, expository writing, English, all that kind of stuff.
And you know, we have to stop beating ourselves up, because, for instance, Wellesley, I won't speak to Newton, but I'll speak to Wellesley that I know a little better, but it's probably very similar. You know, we are not the lily white suburb that we used to be. I have a child in the 5th grade. I go to his winter concert, and it's a rainbow. It's a rainbow of Asians, South Asians, Hispanics, African Americans, and yes, white kids. but it is not by any means homogeneous.
No, no.
And
It's a
we've
very
achieved
different
our
world.
10% in terms of
Exactly.
40B.
And so there's a point I kind of want to bring up. I asked my friend. It's hard for me to have friends, so I actually made one up. It's called ChatGPT. And so I asked my friend. I call him Chat. I asked him, from a Muslim's perspective, the use of drag queens in public schools. What do you think of that? And he said, or it said, it's considered inappropriate and offensive. In Islam, cross-dressing is considered a sin, and the promotion of such behavior to children contradicts Islamic values. Muslims believe that schools should focus on academic and moral education that does not conflict with religious values. Now I said, Chatty, how about Jews? Well, you know what? Pretty much same thing. Jewish leaders, etc., same basic stuff. Inappropriate, cross-dressing, goes against traditional, and so forth. Jewish leaders may argue that schools should provide a safe and inclusive learning environment that respects all students' religious beliefs. Same thing, Catholic, Protestant. I asked about atheists. So from an atheist standpoint, the use of drag queens in public schools may be seen as promoting a specific lifestyle and sexual behavior that goes beyond the scope of a school's academic mission. Atheists may argue that schools should focus on providing academic education and should avoid promoting any specific religious or lifestyle values. In general, this is my friend Chat, I'm going to finish up. The use of drag queen story hour in public schools may be seen as controversial and inappropriate, as it may go against the religious and cultural values of many students and their families. So when we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, do we not have the right, the responsibility to understand the diversity of our communities and include them and give them equity and try to give them the equity that they need to get ahead? You know, I don't believe in applied equity. I believe in the equality of opportunity. And we
see, I'm gonna interject there,
Okay.
because you've just conflated two words which are very different.
Thank you.
Equity and equality, and never the twain shall meet. I know what equality means. I know what equity means in a legal sense, but that's not what we're talking about here. I have no clue what equity in the DEI context means, and no one I've ever met has ever defined it for me. So it's
Right.
a non-starter.
No, you're absolutely right on that.
Equality and merit in our schools needs to be the touchstone, not equity, which is a made-up term that really means a leveling of everyone to the same level. And when that happens in an educational setting, it's Katie bar the door, because you're bringing the super achieving students down and you're bringing the failing students up into a muddy middle.
And you're self-applying it. They have gotten rid. They still apparently have the concept of honors, but they've gotten rid of honors classes and AP classes and many of the subjects. And this is happening now as part of this kind of critical race theory, which they say doesn't exist as part of the teaching curriculum, but the teachers are going through the CRT.
Right. And have they introduced standards-based grading? Do you know?
I don't know. We only have 4 minutes left,
okay.
so I'm not going to have time to do that too much. I just want to bring up the fact. The analogy occurred to me. I was talking with somebody about this. I said, she said, well, no, they still have honors. They just have it all in one class. I said, well, how about if I go on the airplane? I buy a first class ticket, and you buy coach, and then we're sitting next to each other. And it's like I'm in first class, and you're in coach. Maybe I get a better meal when it comes, but no offense. I mean, the whole concept is that you've sort of done something else to get this different class. How about, and a better example, which doesn't sound as classist, is varsity teams. Why do we have varsity and junior varsity teams and so forth? Why can't there just be a team? And why should there even be any tryouts?
Right.
I mean, I don't see why.
Why have competitions?
Yeah, I mean, it just, if you're going to do it to academics, why can't you do it across the board? Now, I think we all understand this is inimical to the actual, existence and the enjoyment. I commend everybody to read Harrison Bergeron by Vonnegut. It's a great story. It's not going to take you long. It's like a 20-minute story. It is a frightening vision of where we're going by forced equity rather than equality of opportunity. Right. So I want to close with your words, and I want you to put your prognosticator cap on, not for football, but for the concept of whether there's any legal liability of the school system for what they did with the theater group in excluding white children from being part of a certain group, a theater project, and potentially from what's going on now by applying extra cultural standards and bringing in drag queens and all this kind of stuff in the schools quickly.
There very well could be. We had the same situation in Wellesley, so maybe it's the reverse. What happens in Wellesley doesn't stay in Wellesley, it's happening in Newton now. We had racially based affinity groups, and whites were excluded from certain affinity groups, and some parents took the schools to court and won. They went to federal district court on a discrimination basis, and it cost the town of Wellesley a lot of money. It cost them, they had to hire specialized counsel. Their insurance costs, I'm sure, are going up. And the town lost, the parents won, and they changed the affinity group process in that effort. So if the same thing is happening, and maybe there's a wrinkle because of the nature of the play, I don't know, in Newton.
Right, but there's some liability there.
But there will definitely be costs involved.
The opposite of cui bono, cui peo. Who pays for this when the city loses?
You
Who is
do.
that? So hopefully not my group, right?
No, you, specifically you.
So Newton Taxpayers, I'm the president of the Newton Taxpayers Association. I don't know why they chose me, but please join us on Facebook. We need to hear from you. You can reach out and we'll try to connect you with our efforts. The war has not stopped. The war is coming to you. If you think you're not a participant, just wait. I want to thank my guest, Neil Glick, and I very much appreciate your indulgence watching this show. If you do see it, there's opportunities to share it on Facebook, Nextdoor, and all that kind of stuff. I think if you don't have this message going out, that you can do better and have the schools be schools. I'm not against schools. I went to public school. I appreciate them, but they should stick to their mission, which is teaching the main subjects and staying out of the way. So I think that's pretty much it. You have any last words?
Only that when you talk about teaching, biology is biology. And
that's a good point.
Yeah.
So the leader who brought in Missy Steak is a biology teacher. And there are two sexes for rodents, for elephants and so forth, and the two sexes for us. And they should try to teach biology and stop applying extracurricular aspects politically.
Thank you.